I get asked all the time by buyers and sellers alike, why in the heck is the market the way it is right now? So today I am going to dive into the things that are affecting the market here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, to try and give you a broad understanding really of what is impacting our very strong sellers market. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jennifer Queen with the Jennifer Queen team and RE/MAX Professionals here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So be sure to reach out if ever you need help with your real estate needs. But today, the topic is all about the current market we are in. For those that perhaps haven't been paying as much attention to the news, what we are seeing in the real estate market is a very, very strong seller's market. What that means is it's great for sellers, but not so great on the other side for buyers. So let's start with the most basic economic principles, stuff we would have learned in Economics 101 in high school or maybe even university. And that really is the laws of supply and demand. When you have an oversupply and it outpaces demand, what that will often do is decrease prices within a market. However, on the opposite side of the scale, when you have an undersupply and a huge amount of demand and those lines just aren't lining up, you're going to find that prices start to go up because there's just not enough to go around, so people are willing to pay more. Think of toilet paper in 2020 and the premiums that some people were getting. Same goes for hand sanitizer around that time. When supply and demand match each other, that is considered a balanced market. And I believe in economic terms, we call that equilibrium. Well, what we're seeing right now is demand that's way up here and supply that's way down here. So what's filling that gap really are the prices that buyers are willing to pay as a result of there just not being many options out there and a need to beat out other buyers to get into those properties. So with the exception of a blip in 2020, Manitoba tends to have a population growth every year of around 10,000 people. And what we started to see in 2020 and 2021, and actually years prior to that too, was perhaps not enough new housing starts through those periods of time to keep up with the influx of people coming into the market. You have to keep in mind that while our population grows by 10,000 people per year, there's also some changes in purchase behavior as well, driven a lot by the low interest rates, which I'll touch upon next. But what we're seeing too is that there's a lot of purchasers out there because of these low interest rates, not buying just one property, but perhaps two, say a vacation rental or secondary investment properties, just because it became so attractive to do so with the current rates. Which brings me to my next point, the low interest rates that we're seeing. I have been told by many realtors that have been in the business for many moons now that this is the lowest interest rates they have ever seen on mortgages. And that of course is going to entice buyers into the market. Not only is it more affordable for buyers buying their first home, they can afford more substantial mortgages, but it also makes it very attractive to investors who are looking at investing. When you're borrowing money that cheap, the numbers really make economical sense, say on a rental property or vacation rental property. Things start to become very attractive. So we're seeing people that perhaps might not have been into real estate investment in the past, getting into it now. So now those low interest rates are motivating a lot of buyers to get into this market. And we got to look too at what was going on at the beginning of this whole pandemic. So think back to early 2020 if you can mentally handle it, and think of just the uncertainty that there was in the market. COVID was this new scary thing. Nobody knew at that point what it meant, the transmissibility of it, or what the long-term implications were if you got it. People were just terrified. We were hearing about people dying everywhere. It was very scary. As a good example, think back to what the streets looked like then. I remember driving around for work and it being like a ghost town, getting from one end of the city to another in just 15 minutes. It was insanity. There were no people on the road. And That's how scared people were just to go out in their cars. Think about people that were considering selling their homes at this point. So what we saw was a lot of homes that were on the market being withdrawn from the market. We also saw a lot of people decide to withhold their listings, see what happened. At the beginning of COVID, we didn't think it would last that long. We thought maybe a month of a shutdown kind of thing to get things under control, and then we could revisit in a month or two sort of thing. So people started putting off their home sale plans. What ended up happening though is those buyers that were already out there needing to buy something because perhaps they'd already sold their home or whatever other reasons there might have been, there just weren't many homes to buy. There was a serious housing shortage. No fault of the sellers. I wouldn't have expected anybody to want people, strangers, coming into their home during that period of time. But at the same time, there was just nothing out there for buyers to buy. Another thing too, and it's kind of like a vicious cycle, what comes first, the chicken or the egg kind of question. If you are selling a home, a lot of the time you will often be buying a home, and that whole process gets held up. If you can't find a home to buy, you don't really want to sell your home, particularly in a market like this where buying a home is becoming more difficult than the actual sale process itself, which is not something we've seen for the last few years. So now we have a whole lot of buyers willing to buy because of the interest rates, and a whole lot of sellers unwilling to sell because of the fear of having strangers into their home and the dangers of COVID. But that's not all of the compounding factors, I would say. But wait, there is more. What became another factor was that our actual needs within our homes changed. What became important during COVID was that no longer that proximity to work. Everybody was working remotely. You could be in another province, in another country, and still call in to work and get your work done with your team members. It was no longer important to be within commuting distance to your work. You have to look too at how we began to use our homes. We had home offices, so now we needed space for that. We also didn't want to go to the gym, so we needed space for a home gym. Things like larger yards became more important because people weren't going out to public places like parks, etc. as much. People wanted to have their own space where they knew it was safe, so having a larger yard and a larger home became more important to people. So this drove a lot of movement around within the city, a lot of the time to the suburbs or bedroom communities just outside of the city. It created a huge pattern of kind of outward migration. There was still some interior migration too, but we saw a lot of changing buyer patterns. And of course, these changing behavior patterns further drove demand. People now were looking for larger homes, trying to sell their existing homes, but they wanted to find something else first. It was a whole chain of reaction kind of thing that just kind of increased and ramped up that buying behavior. Another trend we started to notice was investment in real estate within the province. So a lot of people prior had, say, cottages, maybe in other provinces like Ontario, etc. But with the borders being closed or the requirement to isolate for 14 days when you return to Manitoba, it made traveling to those communities a lot less attractive. So people started looking for vacation options right within their own province. So we saw a lot of increase in purchases of lakefront cottages or even just property in cottage land all around Manitoba, and that really drove up a lot of the markets out there too. I'll also say I noticed a huge uptick in Airbnbs. Just on the Airbnb website, people were also buying these properties to rent out because there was quite a market for it within the local community. And one final factor I want to keep in mind too about this whole market is that the actual timelines we saw for homes to be built greatly got extended. So what you would have seen pre-COVID 2019-ish is a new home construction process taking about 6 to 8 months for the tract builders, I would say. So the builders that are building similar floor plans in a variety of different areas through the city. They kind of have everything broken down into a very basic structure, and it's efficient and it's effective. And we would see those contracts often saying we need 6 to 8 months for completion. And then what happened though during COVID, as everyone knows, is there were supply chain issues, labor shortages, and we started to see those timelines increase. Right now for new construction homes, it's not uncommon to hear a quote of around 12 to 15 months for completion. So we're talking about nearly doubling the original time frame that we were seeing only 2-ish years ago. So that has made the new construction process much less attractive for a lot of buyers. We also saw escalating prices in there, including some escalation clauses, which I have shot a video on. In case you want more information on that, let me know. But it just became a little bit more scary almost to build, just because the process itself was longer and could be more expensive. That meant was it really drove a lot more buyers to resell homes because there's a lot more certainty in what you're getting there than there was perhaps in the building and new construction options. The good news, although maybe not so good news, is that interest rates are starting to go up. We saw the Bank of Canada increase that overnight rate in early March this year. And that's indication, well, that's the first increase we've actually seen since 2018, I believe. And we're anticipating a few more increases throughout the year, maybe 2 or 3 is what I've heard from mortgage brokers around me. This is obviously fiscal policy to try and temper some of the inflation we're seeing going on within the market. In the past, this has had an impact on buyer affordability, of course, but also the mindset of buyers out there. I can see it resulting in perhaps less aggressive bidding wars. However, I still think we're going to see bidding wars throughout 2022. As long as there's such a shortage of homes and buyers needing to buy, I do expect to continue to see bidding wars throughout 2022. It's just, I think that as these rates start going up and it starts to have a negative impact on buyer affordability, the craziness of those bidding wars might not be as aggressive. We'll still see bidding wars, but people might not be willing to pay as much over, or perhaps we'll just see a few less offers on a property. Clients and I were talking about it about a week ago, and the joke was, man, do we ever miss the days of just having 5 offers on a property? And I couldn't even believe I heard myself saying that, but it's true. Like when there's 15 to 20 offers on a property, those bidding wars are getting pretty out of control and kind of high up there. So the hope is that while we continue to see bidding wars, that at least there's a little bit more predictability with the market as we approach the end of the year. And also that perhaps people aren't going as crazy to beat everybody else out for a property. And I find that a lot of people think that realtors are just loving this market that we are in. And let me tell you from one realtor, I don't love it. In fact, I hate it. And I truthfully work more with sellers than I do with buyers. I will say that I represent enough buyers to feel the pain and to ride that roller coaster of absolute emotion. It's horrible. It would be nice if people could have a realistic expectation as to what something is going to sell for. But in truth, we send the comps and we say this is what it should sell for based on what's been selling in the market around us. But all it takes is one buyer out there that is just so desperate to get into a home and wants to beat everybody else out to just throw those numbers completely out the window. So the lack of predictability and that heartache that our buyers are going through, I would far more prefer a balanced market, in all honesty, something with a little bit more predictability. And I bet you if you asked another realtor out there if they feel the same, they would probably agree with me. Balanced markets are the best kind of markets. So anyways, that's my take on the market now and what's really driven it. What do you guys think? Do you think there's factors I missed out on today? If so, be sure to leave them in the comment section below. I always read your comments and I really do appreciate them. Again, I am Jennifer Queen with the Jennifer Queen team and RE/MAX Professionals here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Feel free to reach out for any of your real estate needs. My contact information will be in the comment section below. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We're always coming out with new content for Winnipeg and the real estate market here. Thanks guys, have a good one.